We'll now go into our next item is Mr. Russell Treadway, City Manager. Dr. Treadway will give us a report on the financial conditions of the city.
Thank you, Mayor. I will probably not be quite as brief as my predecessors here just a minute ago, but I will endeavor to be as quick as I can. This is the third quarter financial report for the city. It's very familiar with the format that we've had in the past. We will be focusing as usual on the general fund and the sanitation fund. The first slide shows and again, we're focusing on the general fund, cumulative numbers through the end of the third quarter of fiscal year 2011. You can see through that period of time, we have received a little over $9 million in revenue, which represents right about 94% of what we had budgeted. We're running a little ahead of previous years in terms of actual percent of budget through this date. And most of our revenues are coming in on projection. We're running a little bit better on some of our permit fees, particularly our building permit fees. We've had a little more new building construction than we had originally anticipated, which is always a good sign. On the expenditure side, a little, not quite $7 million through this period. One of the reasons you see an increase from last fiscal year is that we are making some, have had quite a bit of capital expenditures that have been going on so far this fiscal year, and you'll see a little bit later where that will be a continued focus through the remainder of the fiscal year. We do have a slight positive change in our fund balance, and we ended up with a total fund balance of a little over $3.3 million. The next slide is looking at the revenues by quarter, so you can compare the last 3 fiscal years, completed fiscal years, and the current fiscal year that we're in. Focusing on the third quarter, again, you see our revenues are up a little bit in the third quarter from where we were last year. And again, this is a little bit through our permit fees, but also some residual effect, I guess, of the property taxes. Although they were a little bit delinquent, we do continue to receive some property taxes after the delinquent period. On the expenditure side, again, looking at the third quarter, and again, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, one of the big differences in the third quarter has really 2 things: some capital expenditures on our ongoing construction projects, particularly public works, but also this does reflect the purchase of the Wisteria Street property that we completed in the first quarter as well. The next slide is kind of a combination showing the last 15 quarters. The orange looking color is the revenues, the blue the expenditures. And again, you can see we maintain relative consistency on the expenditure side, and you can see how our revenues do fluctuate from quarter to quarter depending on what revenues are coming in. The first quarters and third quarters are generally about break-even quarters. The second quarter we usually bring in a lot more money than we spend. That's when property taxes are due. And then in the fourth quarter we usually spend a lot more money than we have coming in. That's just because there's all revenues are generally in by that point in time. The next slide is on our sanitation fund, and again you can see that this is cumulative through the end of the third quarter, and you can see revenues and expenditures have both been in decline over the last 4 fiscal years. We do still have a fairly substantial negative fund balance in the sanitation fund, which has been an ongoing issue. It's better now than it has been, but it still hasn't been completely resolved. The next slide is our total of all funds, and again here you can really see in the all fund category the impact of all of our capital expenditures. Again, this is cumulative fiscal year to date, so you're really seeing the effect of building the police headquarters facility and the construction of the new public works facility. and we are focusing on getting a number of capital projects completed. Next slide is our ending fund balance at the end of the third quarter. The general fund up to about $3.3 million. The 2009 SPLOST, $2,762,000. 2005 SPLOST, $1.1 million. Most of that, $1.1 million that remains, a little over half is earmarked for street and road projects, and the other piece of it is we still have some recreation projects or recreation projects that are eligible for that money. In summary, we are on track. Most of our major SPLOST projects are either completed or underway. We have made our transfer payment to Gwinnett DOT on McGee Road as well as Rosebud, which is on this list. We do have several stormwater projects that Council has recently approved. We will be coming to you in the next month for our resurfacing projects for the year. The 2009 SPLOST collections are running at about 89% of projections, which is, again, kind of what we based our SPLOST expenditure on is really 90% of the 90%. So we're looking at about 80% of the original projections that we really budgeted for and we're spending up to. And again, as I mentioned earlier, our fourth quarter will be focusing on our capital projects to move those forward. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Is there any questions of the city manager on this report? Ms. Bender?
Dr. Treadway, on the several stormwater resurfacing projects you have listed there, what are the stormwater projects that we have that are these in the stormwater utility fund or these are out of the general fund?
These are in the stormwater utility fund.
Any other questions, Mr. Treadway, Dr. Treadway?
The stormwater projects, we're paying all those out of the stormwater fund now. The resurfacing projects, we actually have two sources of funds for that. We have the general fund as well as the SPLOST money.
Mr. Warner?
I have a question, and it wasn't really covered in your presentation, but it was in our packet. Looking through the numbers, and don't want to get bogged down too much in this, I noticed that we're looking pretty good on revenues, and most of our expenses we're doing very well, staying under what we would expect to see, 75% payout 3/4 of the way through the year. But I noticed two of our larger expenditure line items here, municipal court and police are running 81% and 84%, which means they're running about 10% above where we expect to see them at this point. Is there something, why are we running so over budget in those items?
Police is, we had the early retirements, we had 6 early retirements in the police, so some of that is the cash out on that, which has us running a little bit ahead there. I'd have to look at the detail on the municipal court, but I suspect where that is that we're running a little bit ahead on what are essentially the pass-through numbers, the dollars we collect, and then pass along either the state or county government as part of the fees and costs that we have to collect for them. I'll verify that, but I think that's the answer.
Okay. Well, I thought we budgeted the early retirement program into our yearly budget.
It is budgeted. It was spent earlier. It wasn't spread out over the 12 years.
And we should catch up towards the end of. Okay, that clears it up. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Thank you. We will now go into